Welcome everyone to the fourth and final in our Back to Business Masterclass event of our 2021 series. This time we'll be covering how to maintain your online presence post-pandemic. We expect the session to last just over an hour with a mix of videos, interviews and a panel discussion featuring one of our GoDaddy customers and a member of the British Chamber of Commerce. Today's session is being recorded and will be shared on our blog, so you can catch up on the details at a later date. To make the session as interactive as possible, please use the tools to speak to each other and the panelists. Please use the Q&A tool to ask your questions and keep general comments within the chat box. So take a moment to warm up by introducing yourself. Tell us who you are, your business name, and if you use any GoDaddy products. Make sure your message is being sent to all panelists and attendees by selecting this option from the drop-down in the chat box tool. While you're all getting to know each other, let me quickly run through the agenda. First up, Ben Law, head of GoDaddy UK and Ireland, will tell you more about GoDaddy and the purpose of these masterclass events. Keep an eye out for the poll, as we'd love to hear from you. Then Ben will be joined on the virtual stage by Goldie Sayers, Olympic medalist turned property investment entrepreneur and executive coach. Goldie will share the story of how the world of Olympic sport prepared her for life as an entrepreneur and will share some of her learnings from building an online presence. After that, I'll be hosting a panel discussion with one of our GoDaddy customers, Lucy Sohn from Meditation Rocks, and Sarah West, murder mystery business owner and member of the North East England Chamber of Commerce. Finally, a huge thank you for joining us this morning. As I mentioned, this is the final event of our 2021 series, so your feedback is incredibly valuable as we look ahead to future events. Look out for a link to our survey at the end of the session, as we'd love to hear from you and would really appreciate it if you could fill it out when we're finished. That's all from me, so I'll now hand over to Ben, who's going to kick off. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, Frankie, and thanks everyone for joining us today for our fourth and final Back to Business Masterclass session of this event series. It's great so many of you have been able to join us today. And just looking in the chat, there's some great examples of different types of industries and entrepreneurial talent who are with us today. And we really look forward to sharing GoDaddy insight and advice around how you can maintain an online presence post-pandemic. We expect the session to last just over an hour, but because we're running live, we could be a bit shorter or a bit longer, but we'll try and stick to that time frame. But before we kick off, some of you may be wondering, who are GoDaddy? Well, let's have a look now.
GoDaddy is a mirror to all the dreamers, makers, movers and shakers. And we're on a mission to empower everyday entrepreneurs by giving them all the help and tools they need to grow online. And to help them get back to business. Take Clap for Our Carers, the brainchild of GoDaddy customer Anne-Marie Plass. When tough times struck, she adapted.
And the reason why I picked GoDaddy above the other providers is because of the really good reviews and saying how simple and easy to use it was. And that was exactly what I needed, something with speed and something that was easy.
She clapped her hands in gratitude for the NHS workers, and the nation followed. From the front line to online, Anne-Marie's GoDaddy website took her message to the world. Andrew Walker of Gingerbread Bakery also cooked up a storm. When setting up his business in February, COVID-19 started to take hold. So Andrew turned up the heat on his online activities and he started to gain traction. His secret ingredient? GoDaddy Websites Plus Marketing. Then there was Ruth Bradford of the Little Black and White Book Project. Inspired by her own journey of motherhood and the benefits of black and white images for newborn visual development, Ruth started her own business. During lockdown, she made the difficult decision to stop selling, but gave away free resources online. Something which she says triggered the most amount of traffic ever to her website. GoDaddy, it's the place folks come to name their idea, to build a great-looking website, and to market it to the world. We champion entrepreneurs by delivering the perfect help and tools for their journey. For all the help and tools you need to grow online, GoDaddy.
So as you saw in some of those clips, we do look to feature our customers in our marketing and promotional activity. So if you've got a business story that you want us and you want to shout about, we'd like to hear from you. You'll see our social links in the chat box now below. Please do share your story with us. Tag us across GoDaddy UK, so at GoDaddy UK on Twitter, Instagram, or on Facebook. So why are we here today? Well, as the UK continues its phased exit from lockdown and businesses start to return to whatever their version of normal might be, we're here to help. Over the past year, many of our customers' businesses have undergone immense change in how they operate compared with pre-COVID times. We've seen businesses having to build an online presence for the first time and adapt to a whole new set of challenges. But we've also seen a trend emerge in the sheer resilience that micro businesses continue to show, remaining agile with a relentless focus on growth. Following on from the success of last year's Back to Business event series, we've been running a new set of events, a targeted session of masterclasses to guide and support businesses across the country as we come to terms with what that new normal is, sharing insight into how we can help you further your journey as entrepreneurs. With that in mind, I'd love to hear from you now in this quick fire poll. What have you found to be the biggest challenge with taking your own business online? Creating a website, promoting your business online, selling your products and services online, or maintaining an online presence through other digital channels? So you see the poll pop up now. So what have you found to be the biggest challenge when taking your business online? Was it creating a website, promoting your business online, selling your products and services online, or maintaining an online presence through other channels? And you should be able to click that option now. Just give that a few seconds whilst everyone pops in an answer. So we know that this year has been extraordinarily tough for many of us. It's clear for this group that there's actually quite a split between the answers. Just popping out on top is maintaining an online presence for other digital channels, which is great because we'll focus on a lot of that today. But a fairly even split, followed closely by selling your products and services online and promoting your business online. And then in final place was creating a website. So obviously lots of businesses already online in this session, and we'll cover a number of those topics as we move through, but with that focus on maintaining your online presence. Just a reminder at this point, if you'd like to catch up on any of our previous events in this series, where we looked in more detail at creating your website, promoting your business online and selling online, you can watch those over on the GoDaddy UK YouTube channel, and you'll find the link in the chat box just now. Now, let's move on to the content for today's session. In March, you may have seen that GoDaddy announced its sponsorship of Team GB for this summer's Tokyo Olympic Games. We're super excited to be working with Team GB as an official partner, fueling our athletes and entrepreneurs as they go for gold. And working with Team GB, we quickly realised there are a number of Olympians who are also business owners and entrepreneurs in their own right. We're really excited today to be joined by Goldie Sayers. Goldie is a three-time Olympian, Olympic medalist, and British record holder for the javelin. And since retiring from sport, she set up a successful property investment business alongside working as an executive coach and motivational speaker. I'll be speaking to Goldie about how her time as an Olympian prepared her for life as a business owner, and discussing how she's managed to sustain her service-based business throughout the pandemic, along with her plans for the future. Welcome, Goldie. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning. Hi there.
I guess to start off, because this coincided with a huge programme favourite of mine, but I spotted that you're on a question of sport a few weeks ago. How was that experience for you?
Yeah, I've been on a few times. I think my claim to fame now is that I'm unbeaten on Question of Sport. I think possibly because I was on Matt's team, but that was actually one of my first journeys in lockdown. So it obviously is iconic, and I grew up, I think, with three dreams. One was to go to the Olympics, two was to go to Sports Personality of the Year, and the third one was to be on Question of Sport. So I'm very, very lucky that I can say that I've done all three.
Very nice, very nice. I mean, that's an ambition, I think, of a lot of people, but amazing to tick all of those off for sure. I guess then moving on to the business side of things, can you tell us and the audience about your business interests? You're running a property investment business and you do executive coaching, I believe.
Yeah, so I was quite a sensible athlete in that I bought a property quite early on in my career and rented to other athletes. And since retiring from sport after the Rio Olympics in 2016, I started a property investment business, where effectively we buy rundown buildings, refurbish them, refinance them, and rent them out to tenants. And the other side of the business is if armchair investors want to invest in property, we can offer quite a high rate of return, generally 5 to 7%. And then alongside the property business, I do some executive coaching for an energy firm, and also for individuals who generally are going through some kind of career transition. And then I do some speaking as well, which has been an interesting shift through the pandemic, using things like Zoom. So yeah, I have quite a varied career, I guess.
Yeah, super interesting. I guess one thing I'm really keen to understand, obviously you said you started early, but how did you find that transition from the day-to-day of an elite sports person to becoming and focusing more on being an entrepreneur? And I guess were you always planning to set up more businesses or another business post-retirement when that happened?
I mean, career transition is really hard for athletes. I think primarily because you're having to be at your best in your kind of late 20s in most cases, and then you have to retire. You know, you can't do it forever. Like anybody, if they've spent their life being I don't know, a medic or a business person, and then having to retire, it's a big part of your identity. And I think initially I spent some time figuring out what it was that I wanted to do, and did lots of different jobs. And I think what I learned was primarily I cannot sit still. I can't sit at a desk for 8 hours a day. So a big value of mine is freedom. And because I had this property from being an athlete and had moved several times and kept hold of houses and things, I thought, let's learn how to do this properly. And I've always had probably quite an entrepreneurial spirit, in that I used to remember selling plums outside the front of our house when I was about 6. And so I kind of understood, I guess, return on investment quite young in getting products for free and selling them for more. And I guess as an athlete, you're addicted to progress primarily. So I think entrepreneurialism was always going to be a part of me. And I guess I really love being uncomfortable, and I love progress, and I love hard work. So I guess running your own business is all of those things on a daily basis.
Yeah, certainly. And you touched on this a little bit, but I mean, you've reached the incredible milestone of competing at 3 separate Olympic Games for Team GB, and obviously being a medalist as well. In terms of attributes you can take from those that you honed as an athlete, how have they helped you succeed from a business perspective?
I was thinking about this, and I think probably the primary one is the kind of sense of delayed gratification, and kind of being okay with that. In an Olympic sport, you obviously put in the work, especially in athletics, my sport. You train all winter for effectively about 10 competitions, and then one big one where you have to be at your best on one day every year. So that might be, you know, the delay of gratification of, you know, 1, 2, 3, but in the case of the Olympics, it's, you know, every 4 years. So being kind of happy with, you know, grafting, doing consistent efforts on a daily basis to create kind of special moments in 4 years' time. And it's so similar to property in that it's quite a slow process from having a, you know, deal accepted to refinancing it and refurbishing a house, you know, can take up to 6 months, a year. So it's a very similar business actually, but just, you know, transposed into a slightly different world. And I think being kind of goal driven and super focused, and again, you know, enjoying a bit of hard work, I took a lot from sport and transposed it into another career.
Yeah, that makes sense completely. And the name of your business is interesting in terms of its Athlete Property Investment Limited. Have you found that being a former athlete and Olympian has helped you in marketing your own brand? And is it a differentiator that you actually use proactively?
The business name, I think often a lot of entrepreneurs will find all the business names that you want on Companies House are already taken. So, and I guess I wanted to hold on to a little bit of my former identity. I suppose, you know, being an athlete doesn't necessarily make you an amazing property investor, but what it does do is it creates a conversation. You know, I like to meet people kind of human to human. I actually don't particularly like being introduced as an Olympian, because I think people kind of maybe put you on a pedestal or think you're, you know, superhuman in some way, and you're absolutely not. You're just a, you know, a normal human being. But then if it comes up later, I think it kind of makes you memorable, I guess, in some ways, and it really just creates that conversation, and people, I think, generally do business with people they know, like, and trust. And I think that, at least certainly from the investment side of things, it helps people to know that I'll kind of deliver on what I've promised, and, you know, that I will see things through, I guess, is what, you know, Olympic sport is a good kind of indicator of that, certainly.
Yeah, of course. And then I guess as a business owner working in the property world, and as a former Olympian, in property, there's often setbacks and challenges, or most business will find that in various different areas as they're getting off the ground, especially, and then trying to grow. What lessons have you learned around dealing with setbacks and then overcoming those challenges?
Yeah, I think I am slightly kind of warped in a way, in that I kind of enjoy a challenge. I love challenge. And I think, I had 8 surgeries in my career, and I was sat down twice, and when in sport and told, you absolutely won't throw a javelin ever again. And both times I was thinking, well, I absolutely will. And actually each time there was a setback in sport, I took it as an opportunity to sort of learn something different that I perhaps hadn't spent the time on. So say if you had a operation on your lower body, it was an opportunity to really hone everything from the waist up, say, or work more on sports psychology. And it's the same in business. There's always going to be setbacks, but I think you often come back stronger the other side. I've had all sorts of things go wrong within business, but actually I think almost you have to kind of invite them in a way, and sort of thank the obstacle for teaching you something new.
And I guess that the pandemic will have caused some of those setbacks and challenges specifically. How did you try new ways of engaging with clients once that face-to-face kind of meeting, as you talked about earlier, kind of ceased to exist?
Yeah, that was quite interesting. I'm sure everybody on the call will be exactly the same, but certainly the first lockdown, I was very, very nervous, especially around, tenants paying rent. And I knew my tenants already, but most properties are managed, and so I kind of made sure that I made contact and communicated with them. I think from an online perspective, trying to do some social media and kind of keeping things positive and things. I was very lucky in that I do quite a lot of social housing. So we house kind of refugees, we work with domestic violence charities, and all of those schemes actually are government backed. So we were always paid throughout the pandemic. So again, it was about diversifying, and it just confirmed to me that we're, using the right business model. I had a couple of problems with tenants, but putting in payment plans early doors, and they're all out the other end now. So, it was a good lesson actually. And I was quite lucky in that it is the one industry that wasn't shut down totally, although there was a period where we, plaster was like gold dust, and I must have driven about 800 miles for a few bags of plaster at one point. So yeah, it was, I think that's when I really realized the importance of an online presence, which, being completely honest, I ran around for 20 years chucking spears, and computing was never top of my priority list. So it really highlighted to me that I have to get better at that. So yeah, it was a good reality check, I would say, certainly.
You talked about that move to social. Was there a specific social platform that you found more valuable, and do you have an idea of why that was?
It's interesting because it's a sort of service-based business, and obviously I do business with people I kind of know already, and it is quite face-to-face. However, I've noticed, actually, just as a anecdotal evidence, I guess, but Instagram's quite helpful just for keeping people, knowing that I'm doing property, and it creates a conversation when you then see or speak to them later on, and just constant drip feeding. You sometimes think, oh, is this a bit, I don't know, arrogant or, annoying for people or whatever. And I personally need to kind of get over that for sure. But I had quite a big following from sport on Twitter. I was quite a late adopter of Instagram. My website totally needs ripping apart, but you don't know it yet, but I'm coming to you straight after this to get someone to rehash it for me, because I did very early doors with a friend, and they sort of did it for me, and I don't quite know how it functions. I'll be the first to say that I'm a bit kind of, not as good as I could be online, certainly. But yeah, I totally see the power in it, though, from things I've experienced and watching other people in my industry.
Yeah, we've certainly seen a number of customers now considering that there's been a lot of forced move over the last 12, 18 months, and then it's a lot of people considering, right, now what do I do next? How do I take it to that next level? So yeah, that makes sense, and I can agree with kind of that process and format. One of the other businesses you run is an online javelin training program. which I guess feels more obvious based on your past career, and that's called Javelin Champs. What lessons have you learned there in terms of the power of online marketing and potentially reaching an audience that way through for learning the javelin, I guess, or for getting better at javelin?
Yeah, I have to admit that was one of my businesses that I started immediately after retiring, that I think was probably a couple of years ahead of its time. I think it was almost made for a pandemic in some ways, not that people could kind of go outside and throw javelins around the local park, but it was effectively, I always thought that, you know, elite athletes get to a certain level in their career in the Olympics and have so much knowledge that you kind of want to share with younger athletes. And it was a way of, whilst, you know, you can't go and coach everybody, and, you know, you can't coach that many athletes at one time, certainly with javelin, I thought it was a way of reaching a much bigger audience. I think I did learn from that business that you really need to understand your customer, and athletics in this country is still very volunteer based, and people aren't used to spending money. Whereas in the States, where a lot of customers actually came from, they're used to paying for coaching and things. So it was a business that I kind of started, and again, it was a really interesting exercise on the online side of things, and setting up a website that people could, you know, pay through, etc. But I haven't carried that business on, if I'm completely honest. But I think actually it would have been perfect for lockdown, but I'd kind of finished it and not kept the domain name. So I think it was a timing error, probably.
Yeah, and I mean, just thinking about the power of online, of those kind of formats and services. Yeah. There's a Kenyan athlete, I think, who's nicknamed Mr. YouTube because he's learnt to throw via YouTube videos. Is that right?
Yeah, no, he actually was world champion in, I think, 2015, and silver medalist certainly in Rio. He was the first ever field event athlete to win an Olympic medal for Kenya. If you know, because obviously most Kenyan athletes are long distance runners. So, and he did actually used to watch the former Olympic champion, who he then competed against, throwing to understand technique. And it's not, you know, it's not untrue. He then got to a certain level and then went over to Finland to learn more about the event. You know, that's effectively the sort of home of javelin throwing. So no, it's a cracking story. But again, that sort of shows the power of online, and you know, how much information is out there that you can utilize if you go digging for it, certainly.
Yes, that's an amazing story. You also do another service as well. You run an online experience through Airbnb. So that's called Mind Mastery with Goldie Sayers, and that's about helping people stay positive, become more successful in their professional activities. Can you talk us through? Excuse me. Can you talk us through how these sessions have enabled you to reach more audiences through the online platform?
Yeah, I mean, that was a really interesting pivot actually during lockdown. Airbnb are a team or a IOC Olympic sport kind of sponsor or partner. So obviously people couldn't host people in accommodation, but they're doing experiences which you may or may not realize happen. I didn't know they existed, but it's effectively a session that I would deliver going into a business, and it's primarily around, you know, lessons I learned from sport, around resilience, around goal setting, how to set up your day for kind of success that I can deliver globally, because effectively you're piggybacking off the sort of global marketing of a giant kind of like Airbnb. So that's been really lovely. And in lockdown, I was able to deliver sessions, you know, sitting here kind of in your slippers almost, and then you delivering something to, I don't know, Facebook or whoever in the States, and then, you know, effectively going and sitting on the sofa and having your dinner. It was quite bizarre, but again, that was a great way of replacing kind of lost income through events that obviously weren't happening during lockdown. And again, just really, really highlighted to me how global the marketplace now is.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm just looking through the chat. We've got quite a number of service-based customers with us today. So I guess as a leader of a service-based business, what ways have you been able to promote yourself online? And I know we've talked about some of those already, but it's often a bit more challenging when you think about service versus a product-based business, which is probably what we're all exposed to a lot more often.
Yeah, it's a bit harder to almost measure success, or you can, obviously you've got lots of metrics that you can use online, but I think it's just constantly drip feeding things into people's consciousness. So when they do make the decision to go and do X or invest in property or whatever it might be, that they think of you. And yeah, it's such an opportunity. And I sort of see the online side of things a little bit like almost the prehab in sport. You do all that in order to not get injured later on. I think the online side of business is almost the platform from which to grow from. And I think the service industry, I've noticed it a lot in lockdown. You know, I don't know, whatever it might be, experience-based businesses kind of really showing, because people were scouring the internet, I think, obviously, because they hadn't got anything else to do. And so, you know, I think it's just, it's just consistent efforts built up over a long period of time. And whilst you might not get that custom right now, you are potentially likely to get it in the future.
Yeah, I really like that concept of drip feeding. Is that the consistency to keeping the consciousness of those people, so when they're ready for that type of service, they can recall you as a brand. That makes sense. Yeah. We're unfortunately nearly at time, so I guess as a final question for me, what's the business advice you'd wish you'd been given at the start of your journey that would maybe have helped for setting up for a more successful online business?
I certainly would like to go back to my sort of 11-year-old self sitting at school in a computing class, like almost sitting there thinking this is another language. And so I remember vividly sitting there thinking, oh, well, I don't need to listen because this isn't going to catch on. And that was obviously an error, because, you know, then I spent 20 years, you know, doing Olympic sport, and computing didn't come naturally. And I think the biggest thing for me is embracing it and not fearing it. There was a great article in the Times about people of my sort of age group being what's termed kind of geriatric millennials, in that we didn't grow up with social media, but we sort of know roughly how to use it because we're not that old. But it's I think, you know, just starting and just doing little and often and again, just drip feeding things and building a base from which to grow and not putting it off. And I'm talking to myself as much as to everybody else when I say this. It's such an opportunity. I don't think we have really realized the level of opportunity of the kind of online world. And I absolutely need to do more, and I'm sure everybody can do more. And I think if you are scared of it, just, you know, using a network, using, you know, services like GoDaddy that are already out there to use expertise. You know, if you don't know something, there's always a man or woman who does. So you know, embracing it and moving forward, certainly.
No, that's great. Thank you so much, Goldie. It's been amazing to hear about your journey, and thank you for sharing all of your tips for everyone today. So good job, because my voice is just running out for some reason as we get to the end of this segment. But for everyone here at GoDaddy, thank you so much for your time today. Good luck to the team in Tokyo. We can't wait to see all the action as it plays out next month. So thank you again for your time today, Goldie.
Thanks much.
I'm now going to hand over the virtual microphone as I go and grab a quick drink back to Frankie, who will be facilitating a panel discussion about maintaining an online presence post-pandemic. So over to you, Frankie.
Thank you, Ben, and enjoy that glass of water. And thank you, Goldie. There was so much interesting advice, and it's been fascinating to hear about your journey to becoming a business owner from an Olympic athlete. So I'm now going to be joined by some fantastic panel members to have an open discussion about maintaining an online presence as a business owner, hearing some real life examples from people who have had to evolve their business operations in response to the pandemic, and how these decisions to shift online have actually worked out for the best and will be continued in our post-pandemic world. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Lucy Stone, founder and director of mindfulness and meditation business Meditation Rocks. Lucy initially launched her business on Facebook and has since used her GoDaddy website to amplify her online presence and reach even more customers. I'd also like to introduce Sarah West, murder mystery business owner and member of the North East England Chamber of Commerce. Previously solely based in the Northeast before the pandemic, Sarah took the business online in May last year and has since performed hundreds of shows to thousands of people across the UK, Europe and North America too. She also has the best Zoom background I've ever seen. So before we get into the discussion, it would be great to hear from you both, Lucy and Sarah, about yourselves. If you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how the lockdown affected your business and online presence. So Lucy, could we start with you?
Hi everyone. Yes, I'm Lucy Stone. I originally started going live on Facebook during lockdown, just with 8-minute meditations every morning at 8 a.m. I also run a yoga studio, so it's to complement that. And very quickly, this was reaching thousands of people. So I kind of realized there was something to work on. And at the lockdown time, everyone was looking for ways to help their own mental health and well-being. So very quickly developed a website with the GoDaddy team, and Meditation Rocks was born in the first lockdown and a year old now.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you.
I mean, and what a year. I mean, meditation and, you know, mental health is more focused on more than ever and sorely needed. So fantastic to hear that. And Sarah, how about you? It'd be great to hear about your business and how the last year has impacted it.
Thank you, Frankie. Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah and I run Tall Tales Mysteries, which is a murder mystery company. And normally we would be out round and about the Northeast performing in lovely hotels and venues and private parties for people, up close and personal, obviously. But when the pandemic struck, I thought that was it. We were never going to work again. Fortunately, someone from the Chamber of Commerce that I'm a member of said, go online. So we did in May last year, and it's just been, well, we have performed for thousands of people. It's just been amazing. It really has. So it's given us another outlet, really, that we will be continuing.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of the online world. It's vast and there's so many opportunities there. So let's talk about online presence, and what we mean by that is a collective existence of your business and how you make yourself discoverable online, either via a website, social media channels, publications, forums, and all that fun stuff. So if you could tell us a little bit more about how you've used your online presence. I mean, you mentioned it already, Sarah, about how you've expanded your business, which I guess for a lot of people watching, they may have, as we said, service-led businesses that they may not be able to kind of see it working online necessarily. And I imagine you had to do quite a bit of reimagining for your business to get it to work online. Could you tell us a bit about how that process worked for you?
Yeah, so we went online in May, and obviously there was last year there was that huge demand for something to do, something that was different to do. So we found ourselves, the first few shows that we did, we found ourselves with up to 100 people each session. And very quickly I realized that was just not fair on our guest detectives, really. So I started capping it at 60, and that is the most people that we have, because obviously we want to give people a real interactive experience that they love and want to come back again for. And it was quite difficult, because obviously we'd never sold tickets. We'd always allowed venues to sell the tickets for us. So all of a sudden my poor website was chopped here, there and everywhere to make it ready for an online event. So I've now had to spend a bit of time restoring it back to, or refreshing it, so that it can cope with both online and live and in-person events again. But as far as an online presence is concerned, obviously you can't do all the various different social media platforms. So I'm more visible and active on Instagram and Facebook, but I really have tried to make them as close to the website as possible, so that everyone can see who we are and that we are easily recognizable.
I think that's a really good point. I think, you know, when you start up something, there's the temptation to just get on every single social network, do as much as you can, and that will just exhaust you. So it's, as you say, that consideration of which channels will work best and making sure you have the time to get that consistent tone of voice and things is so important. So it sounds like you've approached it in a really sensible, manageable way. So it's obviously working really well.
The other thing I would say, actually, the one experience I had was earlier. Well, at the end of last year, I brought on board someone to do some social media management for us over Christmas. And I obviously hadn't explained our brand, our colours, our font. I hadn't done that properly. So you can see, if you could look back over what we have done, certainly on Instagram, that it doesn't match. And I think it's really important actually, if you do bring someone on to do social media for you, to make sure that you explain what you need and what you want people to see.
That's a really good piece of advice, definitely. So Lucy, as we are looking towards the future, you know, lockdown is starting to ease and we're returning to a version of normal, I suppose, as we move out of it. So how do you think your online presence is going to evolve in this new world?
I mean, I think you don't have to change if things are working. That's one of the first thing I would say. I mean, we were born on Facebook and then we became a business, and now I have 3 staff working for me. I think what I would say, and Goldie and Sarah have touched on this, is know your customer. Really, really get to know who your customers are. And you don't need to be on every platform, and you know, you just need to know where they are and where they hang out. And it's not so much demographic, it's psychographic. What's their shared world vision, if you like? What do they have in common? And I think if you've got something that's working for you, so we have a website which we have subscriptions and memberships for Meditation Rocks as individuals, which we use through the GoDaddy store. We schedule our social media posts through the GoDaddy scheduler. That's the right word. We have a mailing list of different types, all again back end on the GoDaddy site, so we can write our newsletters, so conversation to people. I think Ben was saying this, that kind of drip feed of conversation and consistency, which Sarah says. So I think always keeping an eye open on new things that are coming along, that your customers might engage with, and you know, PR is also really good as well, because you can get your brand out there in other publications, on other onlines. We've done a lot of partnerships with gyms and other. We're going to start working with the National Trust. It's things like this. So it's kind of finding who you're talking to and talk to them through those channels, and don't feel like you need to change if things are working, but completely keep looking at what's working and what's not. So every week I'm looking at, did that newsletter get opened as much as the last week's, you know, and did that social post get much engagement because it was a video versus just a picture. So I think always looking and learning, keep your eyes open, but don't change for change's sake. My challenge is to go into the real world, because I've only ever been online. So people want retreats and events now, and I've never actually seen them eye to eye. So I've got to flip the other way to Sarah.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, because that's the thing. I think people are now crave more than ever being around people physically again. It's getting that balance. Some people obviously prefer the Zoom life, and it is great for a number of reasons. As Goldie said, keep your slippers on, don't have to leave the house. Wonderful. But, you know, it's really interesting to see how both of you are going kind of ships in the night passing in those different directions there.
I think accessibility wise as well, for people who maybe have disabilities or particular mental health conditions as well, having an online world is actually brilliant for them. They can join in and be part of a community, whoever you are, and whatever ailment or disability you might have. So I think it's a really positive thing to have an online presence as well as in real life presence going forward.
Absolutely. And as Sarah was saying as well, you know, it's increased the reach of her business internationally. Not only are you meeting people in their homes in the UK and the Northeast, you're all over the world now. So it really opens up the world in a really exciting way. Absolutely.
We are finding that because I eventually caved in and created a club for our regular guest detectives who want to get together and chat and what have you. And they are now saying, you know, actually, we're quite happy to stay online because we're so far away from you. We can't come to your shows. But also people are saying, you know, I've got young children, so I can't often go out. So this is a perfect opportunity for me to do something entertaining with other people, which is lovely. Great really idea. Nice.
Brilliant. And I definitely want to join that group of online detectives after this. I will be dropping you a message. That sounds amazing. We've collected some questions from our registered attendees. So I'll ask you both a couple of these if that's all right. So Donna wanted to know how to stand out in a competitive marketplace. How do you both approach that? So we start maybe with you, Sarah.
Right. Making sure that your branding is absolutely consistent so that you are easily recognizable, as I said earlier. Video seems to be really, really popular. And I have discovered, I'm one of those that Goldie was talking about who are older, and so it's a bit of a struggle getting to grips with social media, I think. But I have recently discovered Reels on Instagram, and they seem to be absolutely phenomenal at the moment. So whilst I've always been a bit shy of things like that, just go with the things that are thrown up from social media, especially the new things, because they're obviously keen to promote those. So things like Reels are fabulous. So grab those new things that they're putting out and get in first, I would say.
That's, yeah, absolutely. As Lucy was saying, it's learning about as you go and seeing what works and what doesn't. And as you're absolutely right, Instagram really favors Reels with their algorithm. So yeah, it can be a bit scary, but it's worth trying out new things and seeing what works for you and what doesn't, you would say.
Yeah, but video definitely is a big thing on everything, it seems, including websites.
Brilliant. How about you, Lucy? How are you standing out in a competitive marketplace online?
I mean, it is competitive, but I mean, I'm quite lucky in that meditation is still quite a niche, if you want to call it an industry. In fact, my part of my job, I think, is education of what mindfulness and meditation actually is. And I'm quite unusual in the world in that I'm not a monk, I'm not a nun, I'm just a normal girl next door who loves and has practiced meditation for 20 years, and it saved my mental health, quite frankly. So I think being myself and being who you are, people buy from people. And actually, I've got a community now of members, and a lot of them are like me. They've come to me because I'm a mum, I'm a juggler of life, as I call it, with all these different plates spinning. And I fit meditation in. And with Meditation Rocks, our meditations are only 10 minutes long, each one. The live session's slightly longer, but the pre-recorded content only 10 minutes long. And I think, yes, being true to who you are, just because you're in a competitive marketplace, don't feel like you've got to become beige and become the same as all of them. Actually standing out and being a bit different will probably end up being your USP, your unique selling point. So I think be true to who you are, trust your instincts, go with who your customers are. And yeah, if you are in a slightly niche industry like me, don't be brave and be different, and the chances are you will stand out there.
Brilliant, absolutely. And it's that consistency in line with what Sarah was saying about the consistency of look and feel and tone of voice and everything like that will all help you stand out with your USP.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So Alua Shehi asks, how do you go about producing value-added content to make sure you're not flooding your customers' timeline? And that's the other thing as well, isn't it? You feel like how much should you post online? What works for you? Sarah, how have you approached getting that balance right for your customers?
Well, we regularly, every weekday we post puzzles for people, which seemed, obviously that goes with the murder mystery element, I think, a mystery element. So people seem to really love those. So we always do that every weekday. And for our club members now, I'm giving them free content, which are, they don't know this yet, which are mini puzzles each week to solve as well. So obviously it's a lot more work for me, but it builds that engagement, and that is, I suppose, that's the value added that boosts the engagement.
That's it, and it's an extension of your brand indirectly, right? Because it's all about, people enjoy the mystery aspect, so you're just thinking about content that could still work and keep in line with that branding. Yeah,
absolutely. But it's giving something back to our community who regularly buy tickets, so quite happy to do that for them.
That's really, really good. I'm definitely signing up after this. You've just made another sale. So Lucy, how about you as well? How do you get that balance right?
Well, I had a slight issue at the beginning because I went on Facebook and did, I said I would do a live meditation every morning for lockdown, not knowing that lockdown would be 60 mornings. So I've still got 60 8-minute videos on my Meditation Rocks Facebook page, which are free. And so once you've put all of that free content out, it's quite a challenge to then go, okay, but then you need to come and pay for this. So I haven't actually done any free meditations for a year, but what we do is we reshare the old ones because there's, quite frankly, a lot of them. And I think I write a blog as well. I was a former BBC journalist, so I love writing. I love kind of dispelling some of the myths about meditation. And with my business, I've got 3 distinct customers types. I've got my individual members who are coming to my live sessions every week. I'm working massively now with businesses. So 2/3 of my income, if you like, is generated from workplaces, big and small, of teams who are like us in a little grid, working remotely, who can come together once a week or once a month for a meditation, which is really, really nice. And I've just launched something called the Meditation Rocks Foundation. So from September, 5% of all my profits are going to make all of my schools content, which is my 3rd strand, absolutely free for all primary schools in the UK. So if you've got a primary school and you'd like some free mindfulness content, please do get in touch with me afterwards and we will add you to the email list. So I think an element of free stuff, but also having your kind of added value.
Well, that sounds like a wonderful initiative. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Really valuable to give back. And also you made a really good point there about not being afraid to reshare some content, because chances are not everyone would have seen it the first time you posted it anyway. So why not make the most out of it and give it a second life?
And share other people's content that's relevant too, because quite often they'll scratch your back again afterwards, which is nice.
Yeah, always good to build a network and online. Absolutely. Great. So let's turn our attention now back to your website. So, and how this fits into your online presence as a whole. So Sarah, you are a member of the North East Chamber of Commerce. So how has that helped you get your name out there? And what services from the Chamber do you engage with the most?
Probably the networking. It's fantastic to meet new businesses, discover new businesses, and to make those relationships as well, because it's not all about selling when you go to these networking events. It is about building the relationships, and you never know how far down the line someone would suddenly think, actually, Sarah does murder mysteries. I could really do one with one of those for a birthday, or recommend us to someone. So the networking has been fantastic. And as I said, it was someone in the chamber who suggested that we go online with our murder mysteries as well. So again, probably not something I would have considered without that sort of nudge, really, but definitely the network.
Lots of good advice then, and as Lucy was saying, making friends in the long term benefits everybody. Absolutely, yes. Fantastic. And so Lucy, obviously you had huge success on Facebook with your meditations, but how important would you say your website has been in the success of your business?
Oh, 100%. I wouldn't be here without it. And the thing with my business is it really happened by accident and it happened overnight, really, because when I went live, I had no intention of starting a business. It was only because these thousands of people were sharing my videos and using the videos all day and all hours. I thought there is a business here. And I think the entrepreneurial side of me, and I have 2 other sort of businesses, a yoga studio and a children's yoga business. I went, right, okay, there's something. I mean, it was probably a bit of a captive audience in lockdown, in that people were A, looking for help in terms of their mental health, but B, very online driven, as Goldie was saying. But I had to build the website quickly. So I basically built it in about a month, 6 weeks with the GoDaddy team. I needed to have subscriptions. I needed the integration with Zoom, which is how we deliver our online sessions. I needed all of the GDPR correct information with the mail newsletter, the social media needed to schedule, because it was just me being the Basil Fawlty and doing all of the jobs around the hotel at the beginning. I mean, I do have 3 people now helping me in different ways, but yeah, I wouldn't be here without it, and I wouldn't be here without GoDaddy, actually, because it needed to be quick. And we got a lot of interest as soon as we launched. We were in The Guardian, we were on BBC Radio 4, we were on ITV News, BBC News. So I had to ride that wave of the first few months. So yeah, it's absolutely essential. And you know, considering I'm, like I say, all things at the pretty much, and I'm not technical, I'm creative but not technical, it needed to be really easy. And I've said this once before, that with GoDaddy, it was like sitting at my kitchen table and having my best mates around helping me, and I could just message them or WhatsApp them, because you can just WhatsApp them as well for help, and you get a really quick response. And if you're working like me as a parent in the early hours, you're still getting that support. So yeah, I absolutely wouldn't be here without GoDaddy's website, and you know, a website generally. As I say, my challenge now is, how do I go back out into the real world?
That's the thing. I think everyone's facing that now, but fantastic to hear how much GoDaddy has helped you. And you know, I think that's the daunting thing when you don't have technical knowledge. And I think for a long time, having a website was seen as this big scary thing that only specialists could do. And now hopefully people are starting to see that it can be really quick, and it's the importance, as you say, of getting things done quickly.
So easy.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's great to see and hear that that's really helped and was easy for you to navigate. So thank you for sharing that. We have a question here as well from Chris, Flavio and Belinda. They all wanted to know how to convert website visitors into customers. So obviously you've done all the hard work, you've built your website. What advice do you have for getting people to convert once they visit? So Sarah, if you wouldn't mind going first, but I'd be also interested to hear what Lucy has to say about that.
Yeah, this is really interesting because as Lucy said, when we first went online, I had to do things really quickly, and I possibly didn't think it through as much. So you need to make it really, really easy. My initial website was taking people around the houses. They had far too many clicks. So as easy as you can, as easy to pay as you can, as easy to find the products that you want them to buy. Yeah, that is definitely my top tip.
That's such a good point. No, absolutely. A website, the good website design and that kind of consideration for how people use your website can make it or break it. Harvard Business Review research has shown that people spend 140% more if they have a good website experience than those that have a bad one. So yeah, absolutely. I think, as you say, and learning as you go, there's no shame if you change your website a lot as you go. I think that's how you get the most out of it, right?
Yeah, but I think that's one of the reasons why my poor website ended up being chopped about so much as we tried to battle through the pandemic. And it's now that I'm sitting back, refreshing it and making it ready for online shows and on location shows as well. And trying to figure out what words people would be searching for on Google in order to find the different events that we can put on.
Absolutely, yes, all about that research, all about that keyword research. How about you, Lucy? So how do you try to convert people once they land on your website? What tips do you have?
I've offered discount codes if you sign up for the newsletter. There's a little function on GoDaddy, which I only found recently actually, is a little ticker, like the BBC breaking news ticker, that you can put things to which change, like messages, you can change that sort of daily or weekly. I think just the newsletter for me is key for trying to get people to sign up. So even if they don't buy something at that moment, I can start that gentle drip feed of conversation with them. But yeah, and I think, I mean, it's a quite unusual business mine. You know, if they've found me, they're probably wanting to do what I offer in terms of meditation live online sessions or corporate mindfulness or work with schools. So the conversion rate is pretty good. But I think, yeah, my biggest tip would be encourage them in some way to sign up for the newsletter. Then you've kind of got their data securely and you can start that conversation, because it might not be right now that they buy or use you, but maybe you keep talking to them sometime in the future, they will.
It keeps you front of mind, doesn't it? You know,
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's good to keep up that regularity. And actually, this moves us on to another question Megan had, where how do you make regular updates and manage your time, basically? So you've got a website to manage, you've got your social media to do, you've got your newsletter, there's a lot of components. How do you manage that time to make sure you're not just stuck on a computer all day and you actually get to do what your business is about?
I mean, obviously you can get some support. media. I'm a very big fan of spreadsheets and lists, so just ticking off when I've done something, being quite methodical. But my biggest tip would be make whatever you do work really hard for you. So if you write a blog, immediately share it or schedule it on your social media, put it as something that's different on your homepage so that you constantly refreshing. So hopefully one thing will work quite hard for you, and then perhaps schedule a revisit of that blog in like a month's time, just while you're there. So just trying to streamline your processes, but calling on help if that's right for you and you can afford that as part of your resources. But yeah, I would say everything you do, try and make it as streamlined and as efficient as possible, and make it work hard for you.
That's really good advice. Sarah, has that been your experience as well?
Yes, use things multiple times, don't just use them once. So these little mini mysteries that I'm going to create for our club, yes, the club will get them first, but then they'll start appearing as blogs as well. So reuse everything 2-3 times at least.
I think that's a really nice point. Sorry, go on, Lucy.
I was just going to say that there's a scheduling thing. So Facebook, I mean, you can do it through the GoDaddy backend as well. So if you're in a social media mood and you want to put an hour aside for it, you could just do an hour of your social media posts and scheduling them. Because so I find, I don't know about anybody else, but if you go back and kind of jot around doing different jobs, that can sort of take longer. Whereas if you I do an hour on social media or half an hour on my newsletter or whatever it might be, then you're kind of blocking all of that similar tasking together.
Yeah, that's a really good advice. Consolidating.
Blocking out time as well in the diary. Yeah.
That's it. Sometimes you just have to get your head down, and I think particularly with the jobs that maybe we don't enjoy quite as much, and we know we need to dedicate that time. I think we're all guilty of that. And as you said, Sarah, Lucy, even the power of the to-do list and ticking things off. I sometimes just write things down so I can tick them off. I don't know.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You got to start with a tick, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, as you know, as I say, it's been a very strange year, but really exciting for both of your businesses as we come to the end of this pandemic. So, Sarah, how do you see your business growing in the next few years? So, you're thinking more online as we move out of the pandemic?
Yes, well, certainly we're going to carry on doing our online shows for our public events that we do. We're planning to do those once a month, to carry on doing those until we probably get into the winter, and then we'll up that a bit as well. But certainly businesses that come to us for team building and staff engagement events, what have you, we are going to carry on doing those, because I think there are still lots of businesses who are working from home, some businesses that aren't necessarily planning to have everyone back in the office, if at all. So they still want things to bring people together and to do team building with as well. And of course, there are some companies that have offices all around the world, so this gives them the opportunity to bring people together quite easily and in a more environmentally friendly way as well, potentially.
Yeah, that's a really good point. How about you, Lucy? I mean, obviously you've said the challenge now is getting out into the real world, offline.
I think in a positive way. I think this last year has sort of made us really even more comfortable, hopefully, with talking about our mental health and perhaps learning mindfulness and meditation. I'm seeing increases in membership as months go on, so it hasn't sort of plateaued or dropped off. And I think, like Sarah said, that the team building and the bringing together of businesses is also a great part of my business. And again, like Sarah, I might be sort of taking it out into sort of workplace away days and team building and retreats for individuals in real life, but also online as well. So I'm kind of, someone asked me the day to write a 10-year plan, and I said, I'm not doing that right now because there's too many paths, and I kind of want to see which path I want to go down. I'm only a year old as a business, and it's a really exciting time, but I've absolutely loved the last year in the business sense, which is like Goldie said, that it's, if you feel like you can pivot, then it's an exciting time, and call on that team around you, whether it's GoDaddy or friends or family or people that you know, networking partnerships. Just don't feel alone. It can feel lonely as an entrepreneur sometimes, or as a business owner, but you're not alone. And yeah, it's exciting. Try and do your best and do the best for you.
And that actually, you may, someone's asked a question, I think that maybe you could be could help us answer, because you obviously have so many facets to your business and different kind of streams that you do. So we have a question here. How do you get properly represented online with 2 or more businesses without things getting mixed up or the lines blurred? What advice do you have on that?
So I've got 3 businesses, but then I've got 3 strands within Meditation Rocks. So
wow.
Yeah, I mean, so I've got a yoga studio in Bath called The Hive. I've got a children's yoga business called Yoga Do, which was running before lockdown, and now obviously Meditation Rocks. And very clearly, when you go on the Meditation Rocks page, it sort of says, who are you and how can we help? And it's got business, schools, individuals, and then you're almost into a micro site, because you do talk to those people differently. You'll have different tone of voice, but you'll also obviously providing different services and content. And like Sarah said, make the user experience so clean and clear. You don't, whatever you write text wise, half it immediately, because you kind of need it all concise. Bullet points are great, images and videos bring it to life, but I think just keep everything clean and clear, and assume people only read half of what you're showing them, whether that's a newsletter or a website, and then you'll kind of begin to find your way. And I do cross promote, so I do promote my yoga through Meditation Rocks and my children's yoga work crossover, but down the bottom, that sort of secondary messaging. If people come to you, they're going to be one of these 3 people. Get them into their right bit of the site straight away, and then you should be all right to carry on that conversation in a relevant way.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think particularly around the content, was it Coco Chanel who said, before you go out, take off one,
yeah,
it's the same thing.
Half the text.
Shop it out. Love that. Sarah, we've also had a question for what you were talking about earlier about when you had your social media assistant and maybe the tone of voice and brand wasn't quite right. So what advice do you have on how to find a good social media assistant?
Recommendations, definitely. And then asking to see the sites that they work on for other people, so that you can see how they change tone of voice, the images that they produce. Definitely, I would recommend doing that.
That's very good advice. Absolutely. And as we're on the subject of social media, Elizabeth wanted to know about engagement and how you get people to click on your site. I mean, we talked about it a bit already, but if you had to give one piece of advice on the best way to attract engagement that's worked for you, what would it be, Lucy?
Keep things short as well. You don't want really long posts. And this is the second one, I'll sneak it in. Learn what the channel algorithms are, because they change. For example, on LinkedIn, which I get a lot of my business work through, if you post a link now, you hardly show up at all on people's profiles. Whereas if you write the post, this is anti what I just said. If you write a little post and then put the link in the first comment, for example, that will reach more people. So it's about learning what Facebook, Instagram, Twitter algorithms are, and they do change. So that's a bit of a pain. You have to kind of keep looking at it. But yeah, short, sweet, and algorithms. SAS. We rearrange those. It's SAS.
You are good at short and snappy. That is. How about you, Sarah? What would your advice be on engagement?
Videos get lots of engagement everywhere at the moment, and I also think consistency. So our puzzles, because people know that we do them every weekday, the consistency really helps as well with engagement. Oh, and replying people who comment.
Have that open dialogue and talk to people. Brilliant.
Yeah. Well,
I could talk to you both all day. It's been absolutely fascinating, but unfortunately that's all we have time for. But thank you so much for spending time with us, Lucy and Sarah. It's been fantastic to hear about your journeys, and I can't wait to get onto both your websites now and sign everything. I'm going to be so relaxed while I solve murders.
So thank you.
Thank you very much. Great. So I'm now going to hand back over to Ben Law, head of GoDaddy UK and Ireland, to close the session. Over to you, Ben.
Brilliant. Thank you, Frankie. And thanks so much to our speakers, Goldie, Lucy and Sarah. Loads of great insight and advice there. And thank you all for joining us. We know how busy you are. We really hope you found the session useful. There's been loads of chat and interaction in the chat box, loads of great customer and business examples that we've seen. And thank you for asking the questions in the QA. It's great to have that activity in a virtual event. If you've got a couple of minutes to complete our post-event survey, that link will be in the chat even. We'd be extremely grateful to get your feedback. That's going to help us plan and scope out our future events to help and give advice to our customers. I think what this series has shown is that the UK micro business community continues to thrive, despite all the challenges that continue to disrupt our daily lives. We're optimistic about the future, and as we've seen and heard, with the right support, a fledgling business with a good idea really has no limits. We're passionate about supporting everyday entrepreneurs at GoDaddy, and we're laser focused on providing all of our customers with the tools that they need to succeed online. Finally, as I did mention earlier, we do love to feature our GoDaddy customers in our advertising, our social media, and across our media campaigns. So do share your stories with us. Just look at what we've done with Magpie recently. So if you'd like to be featured in our event write-up, do share your business story with us. Tag us across @GoDaddy UK, across Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. That's everything from me and the team today. We've just got a short video to recap on the session. Thank you for joining us and enjoy the rest of your day.